Hello everyone, and today we are talking about What Remains of Edith Finch. This is a game that came out in 2017. It is a very good game, one. So before we even get into spoilers, any of that, I highly, and I mean highly, suggest you play the game. It is not even 6 hours, and you can probably find it for like $5. It's 10 out of 10 on Steam. It's like 4.3 by GOG. It is a great game. So if you don't want any spoilers for this video, because we will be doing spoilers, I don't know why you clicked on this video if you haven't played this game. But if you just don't care about spoilers, then please stick around and we'll get right into that. But okay, I'm going to give y'all 5 seconds to click off this video if you don't want any spoilers. But otherwise, we'll hop right into the gameplay and how it is ran.
Okay, you had your time to click off. So let's get into this great ass story. I love this thing. The story starts us on a boat. We see a huge shoreline and an ocean as far as the eye can see. We look down to see a book with some flowers. We open the journal and begin to read.
A lot of this isn't going to make sense to you, and I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to start at the beginning, with the house.
The world begins to be described, and then it starts to form around us like a dream.
Here until I was 11, but I wasn't allowed until
We begin to walk a path and come to a split in the road. No matter which path you take, high or low, you'll end up in the same spot. Once you're done getting through the forest, you see a huge house. Probably not structurally stable. I don't think OSHA would approve. But I digress. You go to the front door and it's locked. And now you're forced to go through the dog door. We walk into a desolate kitchen. It's been left abandoned from whatever event happened to leave the house in such a condition.
for the first time in years, I felt like I was home. Nothing in the house looked abnormal. There was just too much of it, like a smile with too many teeth. A lot of things got left behind in the whirlwind of that last night.
We go up the stairs and we come across Uncle Walter's room. And Edith mentions that her mother was the one sealing up the rooms and that she was probably mad that her mother forgot to seal up this one or didn't seal up this one. And keep that in your back pocket for later. We'll need it, I assure you. We come to a book that's in the room. It's 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea, an instant classic. Great book. And it opens up into a trap door. We'll see a whole lot of rooms that are like this, in little crawl spaces. So this is where the real game begins as we crawl through this crawl space. We end up in Molly's room. Molly is a girl that was sent to bed without dinner.
Just like I had no
We
idea
open
how
her
this
journal,
was gonna lead.
and we see the story of what happened the night she was left without dinner. I'll let Molly tell her own story.
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom said, without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat. My Halloween candy was all gone. The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it. I kept eating and eating. I ate a lot of things that night. Then I heard chirping outside my window. Mom, can I come out now?
Sweetheart, it's late. Go to sleep.
I thought about eating Christopher, but I held back. It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her. And suddenly, I was a cat. I tried to be quiet, but the bird was really scared. I jumped and I almost got her. I could tell she was getting really tired. Now I was up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about was eating that mama bird. I gobbled her up. And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass. Rabbits. I imagined his face looking up and seeing mine through my talons. I swallowed him up, and I didn't chew one bit. Then I flew off to find something bigger. A mama rabbit. She was almost too big to carry. I started choking, but I couldn't stop eating. And suddenly, I was a shark. I rolled off the cliff and into the ocean. Now, I was hungrier than ever. I wanted fat, juicy seeds. I tore off her flipper, and it tasted really good. Grabbed on tight. But I was so hungry, I jumped out of the water. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed. Now I was a monster, and I smelled people everywhere. I was big, but I moved real quiet.
Yeah!
wanted to stop, but also I didn't. After the last passenger, I was still hungry. And across the water, I smelled something new. Something I had to have, so I swam towards it. I slithered onto the sand, and the good smell went into an old pipe. I got closer and closer. All of my stomach started growling. And suddenly, I was me again. I held my breath for a long time, but I couldn't hear anything. I think it's waiting for me to fall asleep. But it's not going to wait much longer. It needs to feed, and we both know I will be delicious.
I'm not sure if I believed all of that, but I'm sure Edie would have.
After being sent without dinner, she died. We don't know exactly what happened. We only have Molly's interpretation. But we'll get into later on my theory of what actually happened. And all these stories that we're going to have has a general theme. They die in a mysterious way. Or some strange and very unfortunate way. So after crawling through all the way through another crawl space, we get to Sam's room. It's Sam and Calvin's room. It's split down the middle. You find a note left in Calvin's space helmet written by his brother. It tells the story of his brother's death. And this is that story. Let's let Sam tell his, at least, rendition of it.
How I Want to Remember My Brother by Sam Finch. The thing I remember is that when he made up his mind, that was it. My brother said he'd die before he ate another mushroom. And he did. At Barbara's funeral, we swore we'd never be afraid again. And he wasn't. I think Calvin always wanted to fly.
Sam! Calvin! Dinner's ready! Coming!
But that day, he finally made up his mind to do it. I told him going around was impossible. Maybe if I hadn't said that,
Calvin, I'm not gonna tell you again.
maybe if the wind hadn't picked up, then maybe he'd still be here. But I doubt it. I think he'd already made up his mind. That's what I want to remember about my brother. The day he made up his mind to fly. And he did.
At least according to Sam, his brother Calvin learned to fly. Or at least finally flew. And I don't know if this is his actual death was, he flung off a swing set, because none of these are like the actual death, just the people who write these messages, interpretations of them. So, he probably fell off a cliff, disappeared, something like that, but he definitely went missing. Okay, time for my favorite character, artistically. There's one character I like story-wise better, but this is my favorite, like, the way they present it the best is this one. And real quick, I feel like this is the magic of the game, is how they present all these different stories in all these different ways, and all of them resonate with the personalities of the people that are in the stories, and that's why I like it so much, because the way the story's presented, you're actually looking at a comic book. You play through the comic scenes. It's really dope. This is like what really brought me into the game. Because originally it was like, yeah, this is alright, but once you get to these parts, it's like, wow, this game is a work of art. Anyways, let's get back to the story. So, the story of Barbara is one that has happened many times. A child celebrity that only had one role, was a one-hit wonder, and then was never heard from again. She was famous for her scream in like a Bigfoot, something like that style movie. And after it, she had no more success, and she was still trying to get into the world of drama. So one night, her and her boyfriend Rick are at their house practicing lines and trying to prep her for any leading roles or whatever she's trying to get a hold of. And then Edie and Sven come bursting out of the door. Sven has almost chopped his hand off, working on his wood saw like he does. And so they tell her that she has to stay home from her Comic-Con thing that was supposed to go to and watch her brother Walter. So now she's stuck at home instead of going to the MonsterCon, Comic-Con, whatever you want to call it. And she hears a weird noise from the basement. So Rick goes down and he is down there for a while, and she doesn't have any clue what's going on, so she heads down, and he left one of his crutches, so she took it down as a weapon, and you play through the level. And then when you finally get to the fridge with the bloody handprint, you open it, and Rick jumps out and tries to scare Barbara, and instead Barbara just beats the shit out of him as she's bawling. So she throws Rick out of the house, and Rick is forced to go on his merry way.
She threw him out, but she kept a little something to remember him by.
Barb! I had to let that audio play, I couldn't give it justice. But after that, Walter screams, and so she runs up the stairs, and when she removes the curtain in Walter's bed, she noticed he's missing. And then as she leaves, the
Orcas Island police describe the man as 6 feet tall, with a steel hook for a hand. Residents are urged to lock all doors and windows and notify
hooked doctor, the hook doctor man, I can't remember his name, jumps her. And then fails miserably, because, Barbara's the goat. Barbara wails on him, locks the door, pulls the old razzle-dazzle and flanks him. She crawls through that crawl space we used earlier in the game, gets behind him, hits him a few times, and then throws him off the edge of the balcony. She goes down to make sure he's out, or at least dead on the ground. And as she walks out, he's missing. Then the doorbell rings. And she went to check it out. Well, I'm going to stop yapping about this story.
and I'll let it finish out on its own.
It was coming from inside the house.
Oh dear.
The monsters had come to surprise her. For Barbara, it was a dream come true. Then she saw what kind of monsters they were, and she realized what was about to happen. She was going to be famous. And with her final breath, Barbara Finch gave the performance of her life. I wasn't there myself, but I hear Barbara was magnificent. Poor girl. She had a taste for stardom. But unfortunately, so did her fans. Of course, the police blamed it all on poor Rick, who disappeared the same night. And little Walter? Hiding under his bed the whole time. He took it all pretty hard, but that's another story. As for Barbara, tucked inside the music box is all they ever found of her. Her ear. Now that's what I call a real eerie tale.
So Barbara was probably killed in a horrific and brutal act. I think it was cannibalism, but that's just me. Only a ear was found, and it turns out Walter was just hiding under his bed. Which, props to Walter. Survival instinct 100. You know. Anyways, I gotta gush about the art. The art is so good. You see what I mean now. It's like Bendy and the Ink Machine all over again. And it was so well put together. Okay, moving on. The next one. Walter. This is probably the oldest Finch to live, other than maybe Edie herself. And I also feel like Edie is responsible for this man's life and how it turned out. So, after Barbara died, he moved into a bunker under the house. And his story's pretty short, so I'll let it play through and you'll see what I mean.
Goodbye, everyone. I can't believe I've been down here for 30 years. On that first day, after the shaking started, I didn't think I'd survive a week. But after a few days, I settled into a routine. That's what kept me sane. Having a schedule, living for today. I always expected to be dead tomorrow. But if you wait long enough, you get used to anything. Even a monster on the other side of the door starts to feel normal. Almost friendly. And then one day, everything just stopped. Whatever that thing was, it was gone. Maybe it got tired of waiting. Or maybe I just got tired of being afraid. It's been a week now, the longest in 30 years. I'm done waiting. I have to leave. Well, I still can. I know it's out there, somewhere. Whatever killed Barbara and Molly and Calvin. Maybe this is all a mistake. But I need to stop living the same day, even if it kills me. Whatever's out there, I want you to know I'm ready for it. I'm going to appreciate all of it, especially the food. I don't mind if I only have a year left, or a month, or a single week. I'd be happy with one new day. I can already imagine the sun on my face.
So this man just became very sheltered and didn't leave the bunker until the quote-unquote monster stopped shaking everything. And I'm pretty sure it was just a train. And then he decided it was finally time to leave and probably died on the trail. And probably while leaving. Whether it was from a train, dehydration, starvation, or maybe he made it out. Maybe he went the extra mile, you know, disappeared. Got away from the family, lived a long, happy life. And they didn't recover the body with this one. And I think Walter was like a really chill dude. But I would have gone insane if I had to eat peaches for the rest of my life. And this is the worst part of all this and that in the family, or at least the worst part about what Edie is doing. She is glorifying these deaths, reminding them of the family, making them hurt even more. And that sucks a lot. But I'll get into all that theorizing and all that afterwards. But one thing is for certain, she glorified Walter's story. Because there were multiple news articles about a mole man living under the Finch's house. Which was Walter. So she is definitely glorifying that one. So, next is Sam, which is my third favorite behind Barbara and number one, which even Barbara and Sam are kind of in like that same little spot where it's not their story, but their actual like way it's perceived and the way you play through it. Because Daz is probably the most concrete story of what happened. We actually see how he dies. And he's also probably the third oldest Finch behind Edie and Walter. They lived to be pretty old. And all this is done through a camera, an old camera. And I just gotta gush for a second. Like, once again, beautiful art. It is great. I love it. It's so good. So, anyways, let's get on to this. So Sam and his daughter go on a hunting trip. And he starts by saying that these memories will last a lifetime. Oh, how right he was. They start the trip by taking a picture of the sign of Edith Finch National Park, which apparently these guys are like, you know, famous enough to have their own park. For that, like, anyways, moving on. We got some more random pictures. Sam pissing, the best one. And then we find a buck. You know, a deer. So in the next shot, we see Dawn lining up a shot on the deer. And I'll let the rest play.
Do I have to do this?
Dawn, you don't have to do anything. But if you want to survive, you'll need to be strong. Great shot, Don. I'm proud of you, Dawn. Always remember that, okay?
Dad, it's twitching. I think
That's
it's
totally normal, Dawn. Just focus on the camera. Try not to think about—
Dad!
A man killed by his own hubris. He didn't check to make sure the deer is dead, and that it was fully killed. Tragic. And Dawn was there with him, which is the worst part. You know how much trauma she probably has from that? Like, seriously. And just for anyone that doesn't hunt that much, once you kill something, you make sure that it is dead. Usually most hunters will stab it in the neck to make sure that it is fully dead. You know, game ended, all that stuff. You have to make sure it's dead before you get near it, or it will hurt you. Anyways, with another tragedy down, we move on to the next. So, as a heads up, the next story hurts. It is in horrible tragedy. This is probably the worst death in the game, in my opinion, because of connotations. So, if you don't like the thought of a, like, toddler, not even a toddler, a baby, dying, then I will leave a timestamp where you can skip to. So, as I've stated, the next death is already horrible. When walking up to it, you see a picture of a baby in a crib, which really is already like, oh shit. And then the story is told through divorce papers. This is Gregory, a baby that died in the family. And it's really, really messed up. But I'm just gonna let the story play out because it kind of sucks to talk out. Plus, Sam was a pretty good storyteller. So I'll let him tell his story of what happened.
Watch over Gregory, it's time to... Hold on, sweetie. Hello? Sam, I told you I don't want to talk right now.
Everything you could. Maybe if I hadn't called that night.
Good luck, Kay. Love, Sam.
So, next kid is Gus, which Dawn, Gus, and Gregory were all of Sam kids. So they were all, like, around each other. And this is next story. I have a gripe with this one. It felt the most boring to play. I don't know why. Just something about it bored me. Like, I was just kind of waiting to get through it. This is the only story I would consider like that. Like, maybe Molly's a little bit, but even Molly's was like, ooh, bird. I don't know. You just kind of fly a kite around and collect letters and chairs at a wedding. But basically, to sum all of it up, Sam has a wedding. Gus does not approve of it at all. So Gus sits and flies his kite all day outside, and there was a horrible storm that night, and they found his body a day later. So almost all of Sam kids die before they're 18, minus Dawn. And it really sucks for, well, I guess Sam didn't get to see. Oh, yeah. Anyways, moving on to the next. The next story is Milton, and his story is, it's pretty well made. It's just a few seconds, so I'll just let it play out.
Milton Finch in The Magic Paintbrush. I was 4 when Milton disappeared.
So, he disappeared, confirmed. That's just how it happened. We're pretty sure he was just disappeared according to Edith. So, we have 3 characters left. Our final 3. And these 3 are probably some of the, at least the next one is the most interesting. And that is Lewis. Lewis is my favorite of all the stories. The way it's physically presented, as well as the actual story plot itself. It is the magnum opus of this game, in my opinion. And when you start to walk over, and you don't see a journal, you don't even see, like, just some pictures, you don't see a comic book, you don't see anything like that. You see a note from a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist tells us what happens, or at least what they think happened. And I'm going to let this one play because I could never do it justice.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery. But he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe it. He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats. And toads. And things that have not names. He knew it was all in his head. But he took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself. But he found something more. I worried about him then. Daydreaming at the cannery. I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused. Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first. He told me he'd made a new friend. On the edge of a city he named Lewis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians. And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor. And he won. They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him. He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis. He started drifting away from our reality. Minneapolis. Until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery. Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Lewis kept sailing on. In Lewisburg, he heard rumors of a handsome queen. The queen was on her own quest for sinister serpents. followed the sound of her electric sitar. His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound. He knew the world was all in his imagination. But he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him. He began to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker. He began to despise the man with a royal contempt. I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions. Including the wise Calico who'd insisted on inviting him. His queen waited, holding his crown. There was only one thing left to do. Bend down his head. And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him.
So, after Lewis's tragic departure, we move on to the final and the last one we have, which is Edith, as she starts to write about her last night at the house and the constant fighting going on. But I think it's only right, since it's the last story, to let Giant Sparrow tell the story rather than me. So let us watch the story of Edith Finch's last day at the house.
That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
"To our final night together, and all our final nights apart."
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
The power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance, or that Edie had a key to it.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning, okay?
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful. You know, I've seen that house every day of my life. But I never thought I'd go back to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way. I got turned around. I started seeing things. Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them. Things I can't explain. but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go! I kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great-Grandma Edie again. The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone. After that, we moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by. My mom didn't like to talk about it, but she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone. The last finch left alive. Until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is. This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you and tell you all these stories myself. But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way. This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
What a crazy game. Oh my god, the emotional roller coaster we just went on. I can never thank Giant Sparrow enough for making this game. This game has a special place in my heart for the fact that it was able to capture me without having the, best gameplay, best competitive scene. It didn't need that. It had a good story, and I think that's what we need more of in current day video games. Everything's so oversaturated, but we just need a good story game, and I feel like Edith Finch brings a lot to the table in that. So, once again, thank you so much, Giant Sparrow, for everything you have done for this game, as well as for making this game. And I truly think this is a masterpiece for what it is, and, buy the game. Please buy the game if you haven't yet. Play through it. There was probably the game only takes about 5 hours to get through. I cut 4 hours of content of walking around and all the stuff Edith says, there's so much more lore dumps that I could have went on that I didn't, because I was trying to keep this kind of short and sweet. But this is also, like, if you made it this far, thank you. Because this is my first, like, long-form video that I've ever made that wasn't just a stream upload. This is my first time where I've actually put in the effort and the time and dedication to getting it through. It's also why I haven't uploaded in 2 months. Anyways, I digress. Thank you for making it this far. But now, let's get into the theories of what the family curse is and who is really at fault for all of it. What is the curse that caused all this damage and tragedy? Or is there some secret mastermind behind all of it? Or is it just really bad luck? Well, me personally, I think it's the first, or the last two. A lot of it was just really bad luck, but there were some that were caused on purpose. I feel like Edie Finch, the grandma, caused a lot of the pain and trauma this family felt for her own personal gain. So a lot of characters disappear and die. We discussed that already. But there are at least two that Edie directly had her hand in. 100% had her hand in. Like some of the other ones, indirect. You could probably come up with a reason or a story of how she could have done it, but there are two that are irrefutable. Let's start off with the easiest that she 100% caused the death of, and that is her child, Molly. Remember how Molly died? She went to bed without dinner, and then something ate her in her journal. What if this was Edie trying to cover up the fact that she sent her kid to bed without dinner, and then that kid got hungry and gave themselves food poisoning, killing them? Because mistletoe is toxic. And I don't think, off of what we see, she would have eaten enough, it would have killed her. But if she did eat more in the actual timeline, then it could have killed her. And that is 100% Edie's fault. There is no disputing that. And that's just one, but I got one more. And the other one she played a major role in, and that is Walter's death, or at least his disappearance. She's probably the one that enforced the idea that a monster killed Barbara, and will kill him, so you should live in the basement for the rest of your life. And he did, until he left and died from being run over by a train, or when he disappeared. Whatever he did. He spent probably 40 years in that bunker. She supplied him food. And then she sold the story, the idea of him. The local mole man, the mole guy that lives under people's houses. She wrote that news article, I'm pretty sure. Or at least pitched the idea to the journaling teams. She 100% did that. There is no saying she didn't, and she was using these deaths for popularity. The only one I don't think she truly wanted to die was Molly, but I feel like she used it to her benefit either way. And a lot of these stories she doesn't have a direct hand in, but you can see where she could leave an effect on some of them. But I feel like all these fame and stories and the constant attention from the media caught up to her. It got into her head. So she did anything to get it back. And I do feel bad for all the people that lived in the house with her, because you had someone plotting your death, basically. Or at least how she'll monetize it, or how she create a story about it. And all of that culminates in such a sad story, but a good one. And she basically had a indirect hand in most of the deaths. I think the only ones we know for sure she didn't was Gregory, Sam, and Dawn. But the rest she could have had a hand in, easily. Any that happened in the house, she could easily have had a hand in. And she died, walked off, disappeared, something. On that final night that Edith Finch stayed in the house. And after that, she's gone. And I feel like once she ran out of people to write stories about, to lie about, to create fame, her body stopped. That was the only thing keeping her going, in my opinion. And so once it ran out, she perished, died, whatever you want to say. I hope the cycle of pain and torment doesn't start again with Edith. But at the end of the game, or at least at the beginning of the game, you see a kid with a cast, with a book. That's the book that she was writing while she was going to the house. So we don't know exactly what happens. Maybe he goes and learns all of this, and learns all the stories, and then maybe he craves to be famous like the family once was. But I digress. Theory time over. Welcome to the outro! The outro, my favorite part. So, thank you for making this far in the video. I have been spending so long on this. And if you like the long form content, give it a like. Give me a a comment on whether you want more long form content or more just Let's Plays or just my stream highlights. And like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I hope you did since you watched it all the way through. Type Hyonk in the comments if you made it all the way through. You'll get a like from me. Unless there's like 100,000 of you. Then I will just be crying my eyes out, because I never thought I'd make it that far. But that's besides the point. Anyways, took me so long to get this done. So, I'm gonna go get some sleep. I hope everyone has a great day. Like and subscribe. Twitch, 6:30 Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays usually. We're doing like Subnautica and Minecraft right now. At least when this video is being recorded. It could be 2 weeks now before I get this out. Anyways, y'all are great. I hope y'all have an amazing day. I will see y'all in the next video. I bid you adieu. So, this is a post-editing jelly. So, all those voice recordings were done not after editing. I still had 10 hours of editing to do after that. That was just the voice recordings. That was very fun. 3 things. 1, suggest new game. I want something kind of like Edith Finch, something that has a mystery that I can solve or at least guide some people into a theory direction. 2, I don't really know how the audio is going to turn out on this. I'm getting really new to this software I'm using. It's a lot better than Clipchamp, but it would work. It's Wondershare. Wondershare makes sense, but I'm still working through it, so it's probably not the best. But if any of y'all have any suggestions on audio, video, any of that stuff, send it my way. Comment about it, and have a great day. I'm so done. I'm so ready for this video to be out. I'm sorry I forgot being gone for 2 months, but I'm proud of how this is coming out so far. And I hope to see y'all next time.